already know. When you got Parkinson's, it's a good idea to make friends with the sound engineer. I'm Carol Coven. Carol like Christmas Carol. Coven like COVID with an N. You may notice that my hands tremble. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 10 years ago. And when I was doing stand-up, my cousin said, you have to say something about Parkinson's because otherwise people will be distracted. So I said, okay. So I heard a comedian who had Parkinson's who came up with the idea of talking about things you could do with your hands if your hands tremble that you couldn't do otherwise. So I started thinking about what that might be. First thing I came up with was working in a snow globe factory. Every morning I'd come in and shake all the snow globes, make sure they still work. I told this joke to my children a couple weekends ago. They came over for dinner. And they said, Mom, people don't buy snow globes anymore. You should talk about bobbleheads. Shake the bobbleheads. So I could be a restaurant critic. I'd specialize in restaurants that offer thick soup, pea soup, peanut soup, potato soup. If I spill it before it gets to my mouth, the soup is not thick enough. Thank you. I've noticed that in addition to my hands trembling, now my arms kind of move around in what my doctor recently called dyskinesia. So one of these conditions, Parkinson's, you don't have enough dopamine. In dyskinesia, you have too much. I wish they could make up their minds. So dyskinesia is like my arms waving kind of wildly. And so I thought, okay, so what can I do with my arms waving wildly? I could bring in the aircraft. I could be Hermione in the Harry Potter book. I don't have to learn the spells, I just have to hold a wand. What else could I do? I like that one. I could work with the trembling hands, I could work in a morgue. Every morning I'd go in and shake all the bodies, make sure they're still dead. Hard to believe. So I heard a story a couple weeks ago about someone was talking to a friend of his. They were talking about libraries. And the friend said, I don't go to libraries. And he said, well, you don't go to libraries? Why don't you go to libraries? And he said, because I don't want to pay to rent a book. This led to my understanding that there are some things that happen in your world where you have a complete misunderstanding of how the world works. As it turns out, when libraries were started, Benjamin Franklin started them back in 1791, they were for pay. You paid a subscription fee, and the subscription fee was used to buy new books. But in 1854, a brand new library was opened in Boston that was free. And they've been free ever since. The American Library Association has been organizing free libraries all over the country. It took about 100 years, so every town in the country has a free library now. My husband grew up in a town of 300 people. They have two free libraries, a school library and a city library, a town of 300, so they're everywhere. So this guy who thinks you have to rent books has never lived in a world where you had to rent books. So I thought, okay, so what has happened in my life where I had a complete misunderstanding of how the world works? And I remember back when I was in elementary school, I went to a gas station with my father, and I overheard him tell the attendant, this is back in the day when you couldn't pump your own gas. Attendants had to pump your gas. That's true everywhere today except in New Jersey. In New Jersey, there's a state law that says you still have to let an attendant pump your gas, but everywhere else, you do it. But in any case, back in the day, my father told the attendant, I want $5 worth of gas. And I thought, $5 worth of gas? You can negotiate the price of gas like you negotiate the price of a car? And I believed that until I started buying gas myself. So that was my complete misunderstanding about how that works. So the next misunderstanding was when I had cancer before I got Parkinson's. But I had the Parkinson's symptoms at nearly the same time. So I finally, a year later, I confessed to my oncologist. I said, I was really hoping the chemo would take out the Parkinson's. He said, no, it doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. So the last story is when I got my pilot's license in Argentina. So,
Oh my God.
such a white thing to do. So when you learn how to fly, when you get your pilot's license, you have to have 40 hours of flying. And that 40 hours includes a solo trip, at least one solo trip, and at least one cross-country trip where you land and refuel and go on and you file your flight plan with the authorities and so on and so forth. So I'd done all that, and I was coming in for my check flight to get my license, and the radio went out just as I was coming in, and I was coming in too high. Normally in these circumstances, you would go around, but you coordinate with the air traffic controller to let them know that you're going to go around, you're not going to land. Since I had no radio, I turned to my instructor, I said, what do I do now? And he said, they know you're coming in too high. They know you can't land. Just go around. Turns out there are lots of reasons you might have to go around if there's something on the runway. If the wind is too high, it's not safe. If the plane that was taking off before you hasn't taken off yet. If you start to land and you're more than a third of the way down the runway, so you don't have enough room to land, all those are good reasons to have to go around. So it's almost like declaring an emergency. You tell the air traffic controller that you need to go around. But I felt like, at the time, I thought it was like telling me to turn the wrong way into a one-way street. But I couldn't land, so I went around it. And I got my pilot's license. Thank you, Carol Coburn. Thanks for having me.